Slovak Global Network sa naozaj snaží neustále pozerať sa po inšpiratívnych príbehoch v zahraničí a myslím si, že keď poviem dve krajiny, ako je Estónsko a Fínsko, tak budete dokonale rozumieť tomu, prečo sme sa práve pozreli do tohto kúta sveta. A som rada, že hneď v úvode našej dopoludňajšej časti, pretože popoludne bude najmä o našom spoločnom vzájomnom networkovaní a práci, je venované aj príbehom, ktoré môžu byť veľmi silným impulzom preto, čo by aj na Slovensku bolo možné. Ako prvý si vypočujete inšpiratívny príbeh transformácie z Estónska od Numy a potom sa posunieme imaginatívne do Fínska. Takže nech sa páči, ponúkame vám prvý inšpiratívny príbeh dnešného dňa.
So greetings to everybody from Estonia. My name is Annette. I have been working in the Estonian governmental sector for the last 6 years, and especially advising the government in terms of digitalization, everything related to technology, innovation, and also besides this in cyber security field as well. I'm very, very sad that I'm not able to be there in Slovakia in person, but the good news is that I will actually be in Slovakia in just a couple of weeks now, which is again very excited. But I'm actually joining you today to tell you the story about Estonia and why we have been so successful in terms of the entire digital transformation. Because in a lot of cases, when people ask me to tell me the story, I always say that we have to turn back to the history or our past. Because if you come from not Slovakia, but from somewhere else around the world that doesn't really know about the history in Europe maybe so much, then let me remind you that Estonia didn't have the most brilliant background in terms of the history. So we have been occupied for almost 50 years, and finally, after regaining independence in the year of 1991, we also had a lot of issues here in the society. And I have been always saying that the biggest changes happen when something really hurts very badly. And this is exactly the case that happened here in Estonia. So back in 1991, when we regained our independence, we had three very, very big problems in our society. As a first thing, obviously, there was a very, very big kind of a mistrust between the government sector and the people, because if you have been also occupied for so many years, there is a lot of problems and a lot of kind of trust that has been kind of destroyed in many, many levels. Besides this, also, we had a huge level of corruption back in the early 90s. And if you think about corruption and the trust, there's also a huge problem in terms of having a very little budget after, being again all of a sudden independent and having to manage your state from the scratch again. We realized that even having, only 1.3 million people as a population here, we still have people living all across the state. And I think this is also the case in Slovakia. There are a lot of people that live in the countrysides in different places. In Estonia, we also have a lot of islands. So what it meant in the early 90s was that we had to find a way how to provide access to public services to every single citizen, no matter where they live. And again, let me remind you, by the same time, having very little trust, having a huge level of corruption, and there's very little budget to provide these services. And what was the solution? The solution, obviously, was technology. Otherwise, I wouldn't be talking to you during this conference today. So technology was something that we kind of figured that if we would like to reach to more people, if we would like to, again, lower the cost level as well, and if we would like to kind of stand out in this world, because back in the early 90s, there wasn't not a single government that had been using technology back in that time. Estonia already implemented the first kind of a draft in the parliament to establish this infrastructure of the, the digital government side, or of course, back in that time, just the infrastructure in 1994, so only 3 years after our independence, which was a very long time ago. But it was very, very clear for us that we needed to have this kind of leadership that is supporting this entire change. I got to say, when we have been trying to put this into numbers, then around 80% of the entire change in the society in terms of pushing through these transformations is fully based on leadership and only 20% of technology. Because when people visit us here in Estonia, we often say, you're not going to find different kind of technology here, but what you will find here are people that have this mindset that they're ready for the changes, they're willing to push the changes, and they're really, really willing to work very hard in order to see these things in action. And that has been like this in the last at least 30 years already here. And so what was very, very important from the very, very beginning, and I'm so, so glad that especially today in terms of why security is so important, was that we also realized back in that time that when you will start building something based on technology, you also need to have a very high level of three key elements that we kind of had in mind since very early days already was to provide confidentiality of information, availability of information, and then also the integrity of data. And I would ask everybody that are listening to me right now to think about these three things. And let me repeat this once again. Having confidentiality, having availability of information, and the integrity of data, which means security of information. So in terms of, doesn't matter where we talk about either public or private sector services, even if you are a private bank or private telco, you need to think about also that if you want your citizens to, or in that sense, customers, but if you want your customers to access your services also very securely, to their banking services or again, access their telco services, you need to provide them a very safe way to identify themselves. And this was, again, part of our confidentiality package there. So we started providing already in the early 2000s, also the ID card. So we've been using this for more than 20 years, our identity card. Now, of course, everything has moved to on our mobile IDs and smart IDs, so phone solutions as well. But this is extremely important. And again, this was done by the collaboration with public and private sector to really provide a secure way of authentication. And this is what today 98% of our citizens have the electronic identity card, which again shows that it's a huge number and everybody are kind of included in the process. Then secondly, as I said, availability of information, so that we decided that the safest way is to go and actually have a very decentralized data exchange platform, which is the X-Road for Estonia, so that different kind of, public and private services can have their own kind of data sets, data platforms, that they will talk to each other, so that we wouldn't have to have duplicated information in different kind of portals, but every portal only stores information that they need to know everyday basis. And if they need to know something else from different other data sets, then they can also request that information from other data sets over a very secure, again, point-to-point kind of data exchange platform, X-Road. And today, also around 90, I think the latest number is 97% of our data exchanges are even happening automatically, so that there is no human being behind there. And then the integrity of data, Estonia is very special because we do also have a backup plan, and our backup plan is called Data Embassy. So Estonia stores its governmental information or information about our citizens. Obviously, that's the governmental information in Luxembourg, so where we have our Data Embassy, and our information is automatically kind of backed up there as well, which is extremely important to us as well. And then, of course, also the KSI blockchain system, which is making sure that the data has hashes on them, and every single little move is actually timestamped, encrypted, and we were the first country that started using blockchain system as well. So kind of the lesson that what we have learned here is that if you work very, very closely together with the public and private sector, and besides this also have leaders that are, and like I brought it up before, that have this willingness to really support these changes and to invest into these changes, and you think about as a first thing before providing any services that the secure infrastructure needs to be there, then also your entire startup sector can bloom. Estonia today has the largest amount of unicorns because we have made it so easy for our businesses to operate here. And besides this also, I've been traveling and I've been living in different countries across the Europe. And the reason why I'm back here in Estonia is because life is so simple for me, so that the government allows to mind my business, so that I don't have to go to any public institutions, because 99% of our governmental services are fully accessible online. I only need to show up if I want to get divorced. That's the only service that is still based on kind of a paper or offline service, but we're working on this as well. And even with both online, so that if you would like to build, again, the trust between your government, your citizens, and really make this kind of environment enjoyable for them, then I would really recommend to think about technology, because when I brought it up in the beginning that Estonia had a very high level of corruption in the beginning, then the numbers are showing today that we are the 4th least corrupted country in the entire planet, which is a very kind of a huge number and huge win for us, especially considering where we came from. So I would sum it up in a way to say that if it comes to changes, always try to find leaders that are willing to take that lead, who are willing to work as hard as possible, but never ever do it alone. Always include as many stakeholders as possible, because somebody might have even better ideas, and really think about security. As my background is in cyber, security comes first. You have to build the state on these fundamental kind of pillars, such as integrity, availability, and then confidentiality of information. And if you think about these things as a first element, and you really work hard, then these changes are possible across the world. And we even have seen that Ukraine, as a country that has been in war in the last couple of years already, so that they have become so successful also implementing digital solutions, because they have the leadership, they have the need for these changes, and so that's kind of where the entire magic happens. So what I can say now is that I wish you a very lovely conference, but I do hope it's not going to be just a conference that you just change ideas, but actually this changing of the ideas or ideas will come into actions, and that would actually make somebody who goes home after this conference to do something differently, to build up a new strategy, to find partners in your company that are willing to be also part of these kind of change makers. So from my side, a massive thank you, and I will see you very soon in Slovakia. Thank you.
Myslím si, že celkom zaujímavé a podnetné. Príbeh digitálnej transformácie, ktorá robí aj veľmi výrazné sociálne zmeny v tom, ako ľudia dokážu spolupracovať a posúvať svoju krajinu. Podľa mňa veľa inšpiratívnych návodov, ktoré potom môžeme rozobrať aj v rámci nášho prvého panelu so sociológmi, pretože je zaujímavé sledovať, ako vlastne technológia a inovácie dokážu meniť aj konkrétne životy ľudí a vzťahy medzi nimi. Nuž, a posúňme sa teda z Estónska do Fínska. Bolo mi povedané, že správne sa vyslovuje priezvisko tohto sympatického pána Björn Wigfors. A pozrime sa teda na to, že čo on dokáže, aký príklad z Fínska ponúknuť na to, ako vlastne transformovať krajinu prostredníctvom šikovných riešení.
Hello everybody over in Bratislava. This is Björn Wigfors from Helsinki, Finland. I'm 57 years old, or young, whichever you want to say. Originally from Sweden, but I've lived in Finland for since 1994, so it's 30 years this year. I'm super happy to be with you today virtually, and as a little bit of the pre-discussions has been about what we can learn from each other from different countries, and how we can maybe use insights from various cultures to enhance the well-being and the performance in, for instance, in this case, Slovakia. And so the idea here is to do a little bit of a comparison between Slovakia and Finland, and maybe in particular then address some of those specifics in terms of what makes Finnish culture what it is, the Finnish mentality, and how that has helped Finland to a relative amount of success as a quite developed Western country. Because it it didn't used to be that for a long time, so something must have led to this. So I'm trying to thematize this in a few different angles. I think I'll start by discussing some of the similarities between Slovakia and Finland. I'm in an interesting position that I'm working for a Slovakian company, which is basically the event agency that is at least co-organizing this event, if I'm not mistaken, Creative Pro Group. So I'm actually the Chief Operating Officer at Creative Pro Group, and I've been with the team in an operational function for almost a year, but then I've also been an advisor to the company for almost 10 years. And so I've gotten to learn a lot about Slovakian culture seen from a foreigner's eye. And if we compare Finland and Slovakia, population-wise, it's almost the same. We're like 5.5 million in Finland. And we kind of have the same interest for some sports, etc., like ice hockey, etc. But the similarities don't stop there. I think like the reason why I feel comfortable working with Slovakian people is that we have a very similar mindset. Whether that is because of our maybe different history, but that we have kind of like a mentality that is similar, maybe because we might be coming from different places, but we're ending up being quite similar. The size of the country, dependencies on other nations in our past, in our history, etc. Maybe this is the thing. But I also come to learn that Slovak people are super straightforward. You will see that with the Finns as well. If you ask a Finn what they think, they will give their opinion, and they will not kind of dress it in beautiful words. It will be very straightforward, and so you don't have to guess. And this is something I've noticed with Slovak people as well, that there is not a lot of need for second guessing. So that's quite interesting, and so maybe this is why we enjoy working together across these two different borders between these different cultures. Maybe a little bit about the Finnish history and a little bit about the Finnish psyche. Finns are super honest people. They are also very hardworking, and above everything, they never give up. And there is something called SISU, S-I-S-U, which is basically, it's hard to translate it, but maybe it's perseverance, and it's about the fact that the Finn never gives up. And Finland was, up until the Second World War, an agricultural country mainly, and so agriculture was and forestry was basically the main activity, main source of income for people. As you might know, we fought very hard with the Soviet Union in two wars between 40 and 45, or 39 to 45 during the Second World War. And maybe it was maybe this sisu, or this perseverance, that helped to make Finland stay independent. Yes, we lost a bit of the country, Karelia and a part of northern Finland, but the country remained an independent country. When that happened, we lost the war by giving up territory, but also Soviet Union basically had as coming out as the winning party, basically had imposed penalties on Finland, and those penalties basically meant that we had to produce goods and services, in particular goods, and especially like heavy-duty industrial goods, to Soviet Union as a means to pay back for the loss in the war. Now, why am I talking about this? Well, it's because the Finns actually paid off every penny. They paid back everything and through that, they never gave up to make sure that that they made up for what they owed to the Soviet Union. And why is this important? Well, it is a very good example of the psyche of the Finnish people, meaning we don't give up. We do what we're supposed to do. We're honest. We're hardworking. We're not corrupt. And you know, this probably is one of those attributes are probably the ones that contributed to then pay back the debt, so to speak. And what the side effect of that was that as this happened, Finland more and more industrialized because we had to produce these goods. So it from kind of the industrial revolution kind of accelerated also much because of this. And then from there came, you know, eventually big multinational companies that arose that are still today very, very successful. Of course, you've heard about Nokia. Maybe it's not doing so well these days as it used to, but it was quite of a phenomenon in the 90s and 2000s, early 2000s, as it emerged as the #1 mobile phone maker and still very strong with mobile networks, etc. But there are also other examples like Wärtsilä is doing machines and engines for instance, for ships. We have very strong shipyards in Finland, in a few locations, etc. So very, very skilled sort of skilled industry and multinational companies. We're quite strong in design as well, and that's also something that comes from, you might have heard about Alvar Aalto and some other very strong Finnish designers. Maybe the brand Marimekko also you might have heard of. And so there are a lot of these kind of international successes also in the area of design and architecture. Finland has been many years rated the happiest country on earth, and I think it's attributed much to a good education system, lots of nature, closeness to nature. And then I think the Finnish people are quite humble and they settled for less, so they're quite happy with what they have. And so in that sense, probably that helps. And also it's one of the least corrupted countries and one of the cleanest countries in the world. So maybe something to reflect upon in terms of providing well-being and prosperity in other countries is also to see that you tick the boxes on this part. Maybe I'll finish with the question about labor and about the future of labor. Of course, we're going through big disruptions with with AI and with robotics and what have you, and that will certainly influence all of us. I think one of the things that we also know is that Finland is has a very aging population. The average age here is not as bad as in Japan, but we have very old, like we're getting old and we're not getting a lot of new people by birth. But then, so immigration is deemed as a very important thing. So getting skilled workforce to Finland, despite the disruptions that may come from AI and robotics, is deemed a very important thing. And so the way we try to attract people is then through strong support for education. Maybe we're not doing as good as we used to in terms of education in the past few years. Partly this is attributed to maybe non-Finnish speaking families that immigrate to Finland, which means that also the pupils in the schools may have a little bit more learning difficulties because of the language barriers, etc. But in general, Finland is faring quite well, and so that is quite well known outside. So people that bring their families to come to work professionally in Finland will appreciate it. And I know many people who have actually decided to join in Finland, and not because of the high taxes, but because of the welfare system and the high education level. So I don't know, this might give you some few thoughts about what could be done in your country and what kind of stimulus you can take from what Finland has done. No country is perfect. every country has its weaknesses, but I think in general, like we work on our weaknesses, we try to improve, and by using that perseverance, I think this will help us to prosper also in an uncertain future. I think that's it. I'd like to thank you for listening, and have a great rest of the event, and over and out from Helsinki, Finland.